Welcome to Frost Growth Talks, where we'll engage in hard-hitting, clear-cut conversations designed to move you forward on your journey towards profitable growth.
Welcome to Frost Growth Talks. My name is Shahed Amanullah, Global Vice President for Customer Experience, and I'm joined by my colleague Vivek Vaidya, Associate Partner at Frost & Sullivan. We'll be your hosts for today's Frost Growth Talk. Frost Growth Talks are designed to be hard-hitting, digestible assets to progress you on your quest for profitable growth. Today, we're joined by Mandali Khalesi, the Vice President of Automated Driving and Head of Automated Driving Strategy and Mapping at Woven Planet Holdings, a subsidiary of Toyota Motor Corporation that aims to achieve zero casualties and provide mobility for all. Mr. Khalesi is also concurrently the Global Head of Automated Driving Mobility Innovation and the Project General Manager of Automated Driving and Advanced Safety System Management Division at Advanced R&D and Engineering Company of Toyota Motor Corporation. Mr. Khalesi, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much. It's great to be on the show.
So let's just go ahead and start with the market strategy for Woven Planet. There's some traditional growth trajectories that most companies in this space have adopted, but it looks like Woven Planet has chosen a pretty unique path. Can you explain the thought process behind this? How did you think of this idea?
Right. I think so. Woven Planet was set up to meet the vision of mobility for all that was set out by Toyota's president, Akio Toyoda, a couple of years ago. And so we looked at, what are the key innovations that we need to drive in the market to really reach mobility for all state. And in the early days, we had our first vehicle that we were building in pre-production, and now known as the LS, the Lexus LS, that we launched quite recently in the market. And we had to build the systems for those first. So how do we build that autonomy stack within essentially a period of 2 to 3 years after starting the company? So that was our main first focus. We could actually achieve that. But once we reached that point, we realized that there was so much more than building specific systems for specific vehicle programs. And we started to think about platforms, about software platforms, about going beyond the traditional vehicle manufacturer mindset. And so we started thinking about what then became Woven City. We started thinking about concepts such as Arene to abstract the hardware layer and make it easy for applications to be developed. And then we thought about AMP, which is trying to make location and HD maps really easily available. So then we started creating these new products around these ideas. And we decided, well, why don't we offer these to the entire industry and not only to Toyota? So Woven Planet has a very, I would say, very specific mission, which is mobility for all, safety to love, mobility to love, safety to live. But at the same time, we want to give this to the entire industry. So it's a very new vision, I think, that we're proposing.
Yeah, that's really interesting because, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, so Mr. Mandali, I think the industry world over is struggling with finding the right business model for connected cars. I think collecting data is easy, but monetizing it is difficult. So as I understand, the entire AMP concept will actually make the best use of data and probably put it in a way that everyone can use, and probably that may be the ultimate solution for monetization of data. So would you say that you have found a perfect answer to the solution? Is this solution replicable, or is it a Toyota specific solution?
Yeah, I think there's been a lot talked about data is the new oil, which is a great metaphor. But if you think about where the oil sits versus where it needs to be used, there's this really big value chain that sits in the middle. So data by itself doesn't actually drive revenue or monetization. It's actually a cost driver in the early instance. So you have to build all these value chain pieces or players in order to really get to the end product. So in the case of AMP, if you look at raw telemetry, there's privacy issues within that, and so you want to anonymize that first of all. Then you have all this telemetry. What are you going to do with it? You have connectivity issues. So every vehicle does not have an all-you-can-eat connectivity mechanism. It's typically budgeted over the entire fleet. So how do you really make smart use of that data and only use the data that is really necessary for driving the value. So in this case, HT maps. So if you really want to drive an HT map, do you really need the same road over and over again, hundreds and 200 of times, when you actually have enough data? No, you need to cut down on that. So there's all these elements that kind of come in place between the raw data that you could be collecting versus the end product, such as an HT map, which needs to be fitting into the bill of materials for the car at the end. I think automakers are very good at building great vehicles, but they have to sell. Because if the end user can't buy them or doesn't want to buy them, then that whole process was useless. So really thinking about how do you minimize the cost and maximize that value is really the key to unlocking any kind of value from raw materials. And so from AMP perspective, we're looking at gathering as much data as we can, but really making it smart so that the end user can really, in this case, the OEM, can put it in a vehicle that can sell to any car buyer that would be out there. And you mentioned the business model. I think we haven't found the right answer. I think the traditional automotive business model for things like maps or other components is very much a license-driven model. So X dollars per vehicle, and then you kind of multiply over the numbers in the vehicle fleet. But in addition, I think you're also seeing the apparition of software as a service, like subscription services. So we're also thinking about, how can we do like monthly or yearly kind of subscription services to something that you could easily onboard. Typically in the automotive space, there's this big hurdle that, everything needs to be perfect for that vehicle program, and then it needs to be integrated. Well, why not have application developers like they do for AWS or Azure or any other kind of, cloud service, really just kind of try out different services for their vehicles, and if they like it, then they move into the integration stage. So really kind of lowering the barrier for integrating new innovations into the car, I think is going to be a key challenge, but also a key opportunity for the industry.
Fantastic.
So following up on that, I mean, this is a pretty drastic change. A lot of manufacturers are doing their own applications, and you're basically creating a platform that can be accessible by a lot of different people. So that shift represents, obviously a change in business model, as you've mentioned. What are the immediate growth opportunities for this venture in terms of like, where do you see early adoption? And then a follow-up to that is what revenue expectations do you have in the near term as well as the long term?
Right. I think we've seen the peak of inflated expectations for automated driving that that happened a couple of years ago, and then we had the Uber incident. And then I think generally with COVID, I think the industry, and I think more generally, we've realized it's actually much more difficult to create a reliable, sustainable automated driving vehicle than was originally expected. And so I think a lot of the industry is now focused on, so what can we actually enable in the near term? What we're seeing, and some of the announcements that we've made recently with Isuzu as well as with Hino, and in addition with Mitsubishi Fuso, is looking at the commercial vehicle segment. And so we believe the commercial vehicle segment, you could think of it as trucks, but also buses. This is one segment that I think is an early adopter, that is a B2B play that can look at how we can introduce innovations quickly that can actually benefit the industry and the economy. So if you think of COVID, we're pretty much stuck in our houses now for much of the time. And even if you were coming out of that with potential vaccinations, etc., it's not guaranteed that everything will go back to normal. And I don't believe there is going back to normal. It's the new normal. So what is the new normal? New normal, we've seen a surge in e-commerce. We've seen a surge in deliveries to the home. And that means someone actually has to physically deliver those packages. So who delivers those packages? Well, they're delivered not by drone quite yet, but they're delivered by trucks, small trucks, typically to your home, whether it's food deliveries or package deliveries, etc. And then from the hub to the hub, we have long haul deliveries. So really, we've seen that our economy has shifted for the high street coming to your home. And then in that case, there is an increased pressure on the commercial vehicle segment to support that with all the logistics that comes together with that. And the last mile, you might not be at home. So then the package gets delivered to you, and then it gets taken back and it's delivered again. So these, I would say the light duty trucks delivery to the last mile and to the home, they have to be very nimble over typically a restricted area, but they really need to be able to be flexible about how to deliver packages to that area. For the long haul, these are typically more standard routes, but they have very, very strict times to get from A to B because the whole rest of the value chain depends on them. And so is there, instead of just trying to focus on the kind of level 5 dream, which is interesting from a research perspective, why not actually offer the benefit to the industry that needs it right now? That means, like you and me, we're waiting for our packages. Why not automate part of that so we can relieve the burden on the driver and actually help mitigate some of the risk associated with this increasing stress on the logistics industry?
So any new solution that we try to design, say automated vehicle or even the new form of delivery, definitely requires an ecosystem play. It's not something that you can do by yourself. And unless you have a strong value chain, a strong ecosystem, it's unlikely to succeed. So what kind of ecosystem or value chain or partnerships you are planning to have or with some car manufacturers, some other organizations? So what's the ecosystem play here?
Right. So as you mentioned earlier, Move and Planet is part of the Toyota group. So we want to make full use of the Toyota group of families that can help us, whether it's from Denso to Toyota Research Institute. Really kind of leverage the potential within the group to leverage knowledge, expertise, and also technologies that are already in the group. But then once we go beyond that, we actually want to make this available beyond the Toyota group. So we've been very active to looking outside of the Toyota group. So for example, the announcement we made with Mitsubishi Fuso is part of the Daimler group. It's a good example of the industry looking outside of the typical traditional silos and saying maybe there's areas where we can work together, collaborate. And if you think about it from a vehicle manufacturing perspective, this is actually not really new, right? There's a lot of vehicle manufacturing, cross-platform collaborations across the industry, and it has been for a long time. And these are all driven by the need to reduce costs so that the end user, can actually buy a car that has some cool features at a reasonable price and that's reliable. And so I think, we're seeing the same, now we're saying software is eating the world. I read an article, software is eating the car, and it's the same thing, right? It's shifted, the attention has shifted to software. So how can we leverage, software as a platform? And so if we're able to garner, if we're able to make our services attractive to various types of OEMs, then we'll be able to not only, leverage their data and provide them with a better service, but also it really amortizes the cost of running this across the entire industry globally. And then beyond that, then we need to attack the developers. I mean, the developers is really the community that is going to help drive adoption. So you can have all the OEMs in the world, you like. Developers are those who are going to give credence to that software platform, those software services, because they're going to be building for the industry. And that's another thing that I see that's going to change in the next 5 to 10 years is the traditional kind of tiered pyramid model that's been quite traditional in the automotive industry. What we'd like to do is leverage all the application developers out there in the software industry to easily build software applications for the automated driving in the automotive industry. And I think that relationship there has been stymied by the lack of availability of services, lack of availability of tools. So I think whether it's ARENE or AMP, we're really trying to make that easy for everyone to address so that the automotive industry can make it really easy to build new innovations. Because the automotive industry needs a lot of help, right? They can't do it themselves. So I think it's really this tiered approach for us. It's the Toyota group, reaching out to other OEMs, and then making services attractive to developers to really help, accelerate that innovation loop.
So this is a competitive landscape that, frankly, has only existed for 15 years. I remember when the DARPA challenge came out 15 years ago, and that was the first time I'd heard of an attempt to create this kind of mobility. And since then, you've had multiple players either doing their own single stack, like Tesla. You've had Google's efforts. But that competitive landscape seems to be just changing every day. So what would you say, or who would you say are your current and future competitors? Are they map companies or manufacturers or some other companies that we don't know about? What do you see on the horizon?
Yeah, well, specifically talking about AMP, I think, you could easily think that, map companies would be our competitors, but I think it's kind of the reverse. I think everyone in the industry is looking for partnerships and collaboration today. I think if we're able to provide services actually valuable for other mapping companies, I think that's, they can be partners as well. And so I think the ecosystem from a mapping perspective is shifting because we don't know, what is going to be the next, what is really going to be the need from the automated driving industry. And I think we have to think back to that's our core use case we're trying to build against. It's not we're just trying to build a product. We're trying to build a product for autonomy. I think one of the reasons you're not seeing a consolidation is because as an industry, we don't really know what are the right use cases that are going to be profitable at scale in the future. But I think you're seeing, early signs, for example, in the commercial vehicle segment, coming back to my point. And these are, industries that have an immediate need right now that we can solve. And so let's build towards that. So that is a set of services that we can provide. Passenger vehicles is another one. Mobility as a service, robotaxis is another one. So my guess is you're probably going to see an evolution into a kind of multipolar use case world where we have a number of different areas, different domains that are quite specific, quite characteristic, and we'll start to see applications and solutions being built specifically to those and have the industry start to congregate around that. So then the question is, will we have dominant platforms that are able to support those needs? I think there's an argument for that. We should have standardized, map platforms or other platforms that can provide an infrastructure for all the innovation to happen above that. But I think, you're going to see a continued consolidation as we continue to find out what users really want. And I think unless you actually deliver a product, you won't get that answer. So it's a bit of a chicken and egg. But I think the benefit of that is there's going to be a lot of experimentation, which means a lot of innovation, a lot of opportunities for developers to, help the industry move forward. So I think it's more having a focus on, how can we drive that innovation and then drive usage and then have that feedback to then give us, to build better products for users. I think without data, we can't do that. So the industry is a little bit, I think is trying to find its way. And so as we see the release of more of these specific automated driving use cases, whether it's commercial or robotaxi or passenger, I think you're going to see more feedback coming back and actually being able to create a better product. So when you say, it's been only 15 years, we've had truck platooning, on the highways, I think, for probably, 2 decades now in research. So I think, the question is, as we move to production and to usage, how do you get that, feedback loop coming so that we can have the innovation? I think that's really what we're missing now. So if we don't know the answer, first, let's build good tools in order to deliver reliable services. And I think that's what we're going to focus on.
So, Mr. Mandali, you mentioned about developers coming together and developing softwares and programs and apps for you, which is not heard of. You spoke about automating the last mile delivery, which again is a slightly new solution. So Woven Planet's growth story is quite clear. But what are the challenges and uncertainties that you are looking at? And are you looking at any milestones to define whether you are on the right track? What are the road signs you see on this path?
We do have a number of challenges, in the industry. One, as I mentioned, is, not having this clear, perfectly drawn out, roadmap forward does lead to, a lot of experimentation, which again, I don't think is a bad thing. The other thing is obviously having useful, stories to attract talent. I think the war on talent hasn't stopped. If anything, it's getting worse because now not only the software industry, but also the automotive industry is looking for essentially a similar type of talent. So how do we garner talent for our needs? But it is also an opportunity. So we're also seeing that there are many people that we're able to access globally, and having Woven Planet as a more global operation is also going to help us to attract that talent. And so until now, being based in Tokyo and in the COVID situation has really been a bit of a challenge for us. To attract the best talent, with all the restrictions that have been in place. I think that's driven, for example, my team to really disperse ourselves more globally and to change the way we work, and to have less of the physical face-to-face necessarily, even if we're going back to the office, but actually have more of a distributed, more an asynchronous communication across different time zones. I mean, we're in Europe now, and then Asia Pacific, and then North America. How can we create that culture, that 24/7 development culture, and then be automated increasingly? I think changing the way we work in order to make it easier for people to join, I think, is another challenge that we're working on. So changing our way of working, way of thinking is going to be key. And I think it's not just us. I think the whole industry. I think in Japan was recently announced that the government is thinking about introducing a 4-day week to increase productivity. And so I think one of the challenges for our industry is to kind of rethink the way we work, because unless we do that, it's going to be very difficult to really generate that productivity and the innovation you're looking for. So we're kind of at the forefront of that, but what will really work, I think, is yet to be seen.
So you've laid out a pretty clear and compelling vision and a roadmap for not just your company, but for the entire space. So in order to get there, what are going to be the key focus areas for you in terms of achieving those goals?
At the different CESs we've had recently, that Woven City is going to be one of the big focuses for us. So I didn't talk too much about it today, but Woven City is definitely one of the explorations. We're looking at how will people live in a automated mobility society. What does that actually look like, from buildings to how we interact, to how we work with robots, how robots are going to help in our daily life, both visibly and behind the scenes. And so Woven City is definitely one of those key focus areas for us. And as you know, we've started work on that as well. In addition, Arene, that I haven't again spoken that much about, is again a big focus for us as we move to a software first approach for the whole of the Toyota Group. How do we really enable a software first mindset when you have a very efficient the very efficient machinery of Toyota Motor Corporation in terms of vehicle manufacturing? How do you bring that innovation into the vehicle space, as we've seen with some other players? So that's going to be definitely another focus for us. In the short term, I think AMP, as it has a quite limited domain, it's mapping, right? It's localization. It's helping the vehicle position itself for planning, for perception. And I think this is a short-term focus area for us, because we believe this is one of the key enablers. And if we're able to pull this off, then we're able to start the ball rolling in terms of larger and larger integration. So we have a kind of a spaced rollout at Woven Planet. We have Woven City, which is the amazing dream of the entire integration of the city and people, robots, and machines. And then we have Arene, which is looking at helping abstract out the hardware, helping applications come into the vehicle, helping software first. And then we have AMP, which is really looking at one of these fundamental things that are where am I? What are the decisions I need to be making right now to be safe, which is what AMP is about. So really kind of having that stepwise approach, I think, is one way to learn along the way and deliver value at each point to make progress for the industry.
So smart city right at the top, which is Woven City, then Arene, which is software first, and then comes AMP. I think you have laid out your vision perfectly, and we wish you luck for that. Now, one of the most important objectives for Frost Growth Talks is also to inspire innovation. So now that you are at the forefront of cutting edge innovations, you are doing something which others haven't really thought of. What would be your recommendations or suggestions for innovators all around the world who are also looking to have something cutting edge solution, a cutting edge technology? So what would be your message for them?
I have two messages. One is prototype quickly, deliver quickly, and start testing on real vehicles. I think that's something that really helped us in the early days. So when I joined Toyota, I don't know if I should be saying this, but when I joined Toyota back in 2018, there was this debate about whether we should be having X set of attributes versus Y set of attributes, and there's this big scenario planning exercise that'd be ongoing, and it was essentially going around in a circle. Some people thought A, some people thought B. And in reality, it didn't really matter because we weren't actually doing real testing. So when I came in, I said, look, let's just build based on this set of assumptions, this set of small assumptions. I take a set of 3 or 4 attributes. Let's take traffic signs, lane markings, road boundaries, and poles. Let's just focus on that. If we can extract those from the camera and then create a map just based on that, will be successful. But then let's test it on a car, on an actual automated driving car, to make sure that it can actually use it and make sure that it's a useful development, right? So it's not just an idea project, a research project. And so we did that, and within literally 8 months, we had 4 engineers. Honestly, I don't really know how they did it, but in the end, they managed to break through that and have this breakthrough that we could actually create with essentially commodity cameras, an HD map that was actually useful for a real car, and we drove it through, central Tokyo daytime traffic, right? And that was a validation point. So for my first suggestion would be really kind of focus on a very, very small set of a very small problem, and just really kind of deliver on that quickly and put it in the car and see if it works. And that is really the cycle that will provide you feedback, whether you're completely out of step, you're completely down the wrong track, or if you're onto something. So that's my first thing. The second thing is partner. If there's an area you're unfamiliar with, or you really are not sure how to go about doing that, just partner. Just reach out to other companies in the space that have done that before. We did that a number of times in the early years. Worked on areas that we weren't familiar with, and we just partnered, and we just built proof of concepts together, and we learned together. And then down the road, we ended up in some cases, building it ourselves, because we believe there are some limitations in the technology we didn't want to hold on to. In other areas, we just realized that we were just completely out of our depth, and that's not something we wanted to build in-house. So my second suggestion would be, don't try to do everything yourself. Do reach out with 2 partners, and the industry is very collaborative these days. As I said, it's very much an age of experimentation in automated driving, both from a user end perspective as well as from a technology perspective. So everyone is really looking for better ways to collaborate. So don't be shy, partner with others, and that will get you, again, a step further on your validation. Will give you some more data. And I think really cycling that, partnering as well as rapid prototyping, which I think is quite typical in the software industry, and replicating that into the automotive space as well, is, I think, 2 of the things that I would just recommend innovators look at right now. And yeah, good luck, but whatever you learn, that will take you to the next stage. So keep persevering. There's always that golden nugget in whatever you're doing. At least that's what we found. So it's my
fantastic. I think rapid prototyping and partnerships, 2 key mantras from Mr. Mandali. Thank you very much.
So, first of all, it's really refreshing to see that even in a space with an incredible amount of innovation and an incredible amount of investment, that someone is actually pushing us forward to the promise of automated driving. I feel like it's always been just beyond our reach, and it really takes someone to put the logical pieces together like you're doing to make it happen. And I'm really excited to see you do that. And on behalf of all the growth professionals at Frost & Sullivan, I'd like to thank our guest, Mandali Khalesi, for joining us to share his journey. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Frost Growth Talks is a production of Frost & Sullivan. For 60 years, Frost & Sullivan has been applying actionable insights to create a stream of innovative growth opportunities for companies, governments, and investors. Visit us online at frost.com to learn more. For Frost Growth Talks, I'm Shahed Amanullah, my colleague Vivek Vaidya. See you next time.
We're always on the lookout for individuals who are having a positive influence on society and our world. If you're someone who would relish the opportunity to share your experience, or know someone you would like to nominate, reach out to us at frost.com/GTnomination, or spread the word with #FrostGrowthTalks. Until next time, keep growing.